someone he knew had been in the Gulag, or his mom was born in the Gulag. And after Stalin died and the Soviet Union liberalized and lots of people in the Gulags were freed by Khrushchev and so on and so forth, I didn't know this. Many of some of the guards of the Gulag killed themselves because they had genuinely believed that everyone in these camps was there for a reason. And when they found out that these people were completely innocent, they didn't even have trials, and that they were the ones forced them to work themselves to starve, they couldn't deal with that guilt. So when you are a pacifist or non-retaliatory, and you're forcing someone who's using force, like, look what you're doing. Look what you've become.
Now it's time for Lefties Losing It.
Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared. Now, that doesn't answer the people who say it's still completely unfair to not have looked at the laptop in a timely way and to have shut down the New York Post's Twitter account. Like that's just a conspiracy. That's a left-wing conspiracy to deny the presidency to Donald Trump. Absolutely, it was. Absolutely, right? But I think it was warranted.
If you're being required to do things that make you weak and ashamed, then stop. Don't do them. Like, one of the things I learned from Solzhenitsyn and Frankl was that systems go terribly out of control when people don't stop them when they're going mildly out of control. You know, and you might say, I should just keep my goddamn head down and shut up. It's like, maybe you should. Like, that's not bad advice. You know, you don't want to make unnecessary enemies, and you don't need any more trouble than you need. But you got to ask yourself on a day-to-day basis, what makes you think you're not selling your soul? You know, and there's so much foolishness going on in the mid-level bureaucratic world now. That's where all the tyranny seems to be focused. And the reason that it multiplies is because sensible people say nothing when they should say something. And what's so strange about that is that there are way more sensible people than people who aren't sensible. They're just not as noisy. So you got to ask yourself when you go and do what you do, like, is this making you stronger? Is this making you weaker? And if it's making you weaker, then you got to ask yourself, do you really want to be weaker? Because the weaker you get, the more you're tyrannized. And then worse than that, like, the weaker you get, the more bitter you get. And so I would say you have an ethical responsibility as a citizen to forthrightly confront creeping tyranny no matter where it occurs. And part of what we're learning, I would say, from these stories, if we're learning anything at all, is that if you're aimed at the good, which is a question you really got to ask yourself, you know, if you're genuinely aimed at the good, then take heart, because you're a lot stronger than you think.
Every time I meet a weird person, to me, heroism is also taking a risk to rebel against mediocrity, like in the most simplest of ways, like taking a risk to break the little bit of rule, to take that little bit of a leap of like that little protest against the bureaucracy. I mean, like literally at the line at Starbucks or something like that. Like even in the tiniest of ways, when I see people, just like, it's almost like that little like glimmer in their eye, a wink, like we're in this together. There's all this conformity all around us. That's at a different time could have been Nazi Germany, could have been Stalinist Soviet Union. Sure. We're in this together. We're going to rebel against that conformity by just taking the risk, a little bit of risk against mediocrity.
I think a lot of people are not capable of that.
They're accustomed to it. I don't know if they're not capable.
No, I understand your position. I'm disagreeing with it. I'm saying I do not think they're capable. I think a lot of people effectively don't have souls. They do not have a conscience in this sense where they're going to look at an issue, bring their critical thinking, and say, all right, I am going to do the right thing, although I'm taking a risk.
I don't think thinking is involved, or is it just taking that leap? There's something about that basic human spirit. Forget the thinking part. It's just saying, like, I'll take that risk. They're taking that adventure. The same thing that got people to explore the seas, you know, throughout human civilization, explore land, explore the oceans, like that exploration. Like, we've done stuff this way all this time. I'm gonna take a leap, and that comes out of nowhere.
But those people are the heroes. But I don't think that's universal. I'm going to use a very gauche example. There was a show called Scare Tactics, which was basically a candid camera, but they would scare people. Like they'd have vampires, whatever, and hidden camera and people's reactions. And so but sometimes the prank didn't work out like they expected. So there was one where they were hiring the people who were the marks, the contestants, so to speak, who were hired to be a security guard. Okay, and you have to watch this factory overnight and you get paid. And what the setup was, some people were breaking out of the factory in the middle of the night, like in rags, and they were saying they were keeping us prisoner here, like blah blah, and just watch the person reaction to this. And there was one security guard where he basically forced them back into the building, and they're working us 24/7. We're getting beaten. He's like, I'm here to do a job, get back in there. And you watch this, and it never even enters his head to be like, something's wrong here. He was given his orders, he's following his orders, and to me, that is not uncommon. And that person, although they look like you and I, there's something essentially human missing with them. Now, very quickly, the reaction is, well, it's one step from there to Nazism. I don't think it's something I'm not saying this person should be killed, but I'm just saying to expect that every human being has the capacity to have that defiance, especially at a cost of their life. That, I think, is not realistic.
You can run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Sooner or later, it comes down. Sooner or later, it comes down. Go and tell that long-tongued rider. Go and tell that great divider. Tell the reveler, the gambler, the night rider. Tell them the gods cut them down.
Listen to them, Marxists. Can you hear the horns honking? Can you hear them? They honk for thee.
I swear to God, we'll hold them still when they took away everybody's free will. Tell the rambler, the gambler, the night, knowing the gods are down. Sooner or later, gonna cut you down. You can run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. But sooner or later, God will cut you down. Someday soon, God will cut you down. You can run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Sooner or later, cut you down. Someday, cut you down. Go and tell that lonesome liar. Go and tell that midnight rider. Tell the reveler, the gambler, the night rider. Tell the gods cut them down.
And now, with no further ado, Scott Campbell and Jay Shaw, the Unacceptables.
Hey folks, episode number 17, Fake News Tuesday. Welcome everybody in the chat, and thank you very much for joining us. Thank you as well for watching the review or the restream or the rebroadcast of this, those of you that aren't joining us live. And as well, thank you to those of you that will listen to the stream and not see it. because both Jay and I were told we had a face for radio, so we should probably keep it that way. That said, with me as usual is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Unacceptable Jay Shaw. Jay, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Everything's good over here, man.
Yeah.
Beautiful day in the Kootenays today. Wonderful and lovely. Rabbit hole guilt news. We did. I forgot to mention this in the pre-show. We may have a partnership with a business here in town who is also connected to a very large franchise. So that's kind of a a hit or miss one. It's tough. I'm not a big fan of big franchises, unless of course they have some good intentions going on. So we'll update that in coming days, but it's a step in the right direction, and hopefully the guild can keep that moving ahead, so we can provide even more cool stuff to people, do more good stuff, and start to create this. One of my biggest goals is not to tear down a system, not to burn everything down, or have a revolution that kills 10 million people, but to create a parallel economy and a parallel society, and to sort of show people, what you're doing is really shitty, and there's a better way to do it. Because I prefer the honey to the vinegar myself, or the carrot to the stick, or however you want to analogize that. So that's where I'm at, and all my plants are doing really well. The garden's doing great. Shout out to anybody who has been keeping up on the daily pre-spring indoor garden episodes. Today was day 4, and we got some good viewers and good comments, good questions. So let's keep that up. And back to you, Scott.
Yeah, good stuff, Jay. Thanks. I actually did check out both your videos there. Or no, wait. Yeah, you do
there
have
was
2. That's right. There's 2.
Yeah.
I thought I was dreaming there for a second. What I like about them is the fact that well, for me it's close to home, right? I love plants, and I love growing food and stuff like that. But what I like about them is that you break it down and make it super easy for people to get, and use super accessible things like Nestle water bottles, and just super easy stuff. You don't have to dream it up. You don't need a big budget. It makes it super attainable, and the information is valid. I know I grow food. It's valid, and it's gonna work.
Yeah, and I think it's a good way to learn. Is like, why doesn't a person maybe mess around cheaply and learn at least the basics before you make that investment? Like, maybe this is the year that you to invest $70 and just see what you could do, because I know you're going to fall in love with it. And then next year you might go, you know what, that was great, and food's even more expensive now, and it's time for us to put a couple $100 into this honey.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm hoping for. That's the vision.
It'll get you. The fever, the gardening fever will get you, and you'll be healthier from it, both from the amount of exercise and sunlight and fresh air you get, but also from the quality of the food and the quality of what's growing your food. Well, that'll make a big difference. You'll be shocked, actually, how good food actually tastes when you grow it yourself.
When it's still alive. I mean, when you take a carrot out of the ground and you cook that within 20 minutes,
that's right.
You're eating something that's literally alive. There's nothing more fresh than that, and nothing tastes better. Like, you could take the same carrot out of your garden that came out of the store, and it's probably a B grade carrot in the store. It's not like, it's not all fancy looking. It tastes about 10 times better than anything they've got in there. Guaranteed.
Oh, for sure.
Every time.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure, it does. It does. Yeah. It's actually quite remarkable. I used to think back in the day that was simply because I did it myself. So it was like my brain was telling me it should be more rewarding and it should taste better. But in fact, I'm not the only one that notices the difference. So it can't be my brain. Now let's get right into this here. Everybody here, with perhaps the exception of Logan, will have likely heard. Oh, by the way, Logan's here, and let's see.
Hey, Logan.
just before we move on here, so Logan's saying here, I don't know if you can see this comment. She's I'm so happy gardening season outside is here. So she's excited for gardening season as well, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Logan, for joining and commenting, and welcome. So back to it. So it's Fake News Tuesday, and you may have heard some fake news from our liberal government, because they're really good with fake news and lying. They have people who are in charge of literally disinformation. That's a true story. That's not the fake news. That's actually true. The fake news you might have heard from the liberal government goes something like this. I'm going to roll a clip here, Jay, if you don't mind. I'm going to just roll it right now.
Roll it.
Roll it. Here we go.
We will appoint an eminent Canadian to the position of independent special rapporteur, who will have a wide mandate to make expert recommendations on protecting and enhancing Canadians' faith in our democracy.
Justin Trudeau's plan to buy some time on the issue of China's election interference in Canada. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. You've heard all about Justin Trudeau's plan now. He's going to have a secret committee of MPs that report to him, that are sworn to secrecy, investigate China's election interference allegations. He's going to appoint a special rapporteur. It sounds like a fancy title, but we're not quite sure what they're going to do, other than advise him on should he actually appoint and announce a public inquiry. That's going to be part of it, but who's the person going to be? At this point, we don't know, but Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has a good idea that it's probably going to be someone who isn't truly independent, something he's calling for, something the opposition parties are calling for, but based on Trudeau's track record, Poilievre doesn't think it's going to happen.
Of course he could pick someone independent, but he won't. He'll pick another liberal establishment insider, a real Ottawa insider with some gray hair, who looks like a reasonable fellow, but we all know that it will be someone tied to him, tied to the Liberals, here to protect the Liberal establishment, just like the former head of the Trudeau Foundation.
Trudeau has said that he will consult with the opposition leaders. I think that Yves-François Blanchet had the best line on that, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, saying consultation from Justin Trudeau means he calls you, talks to you on the phone for 5 minutes, and then makes up his own mind and does what he wanted in the first place anyway. So don't expect a whole lot from this. Look, this entire thing was just about Trudeau trying to buy time. He used football analogies. Yes, he punted. All those announcements, the 8 different action points, that's motion in the backfield, making you think that something's going on when, not really. That's not happening. This is about distracting and making people think that he's taking this issue seriously, when really he's just delaying time and again. Why? Because the Trudeau Liberals don't want this investigated. If they don't want it investigated, is it because they're guilty? Given how many times they've tried to obstruct, tried to stop, tried to delay this, that's definitely how it looks. Canadians shouldn't be okay with any political party benefiting from political interference, whether it's the Liberals or the Conservatives, the NDP, any of them. We shouldn't accept it. And we shouldn't accept if only one candidate was elected or defeated based on the whims of a foreign government. We know that that happened. We know that China did impact, maybe not the end result, but in certain ridings, they had a say in who was going to be the representative in Parliament. That is something that needs to be investigated. It needs to be stopped. And the plan that Justin Trudeau's announced, it doesn't cut it. Poilievre is right. Let us know what you think. Drop a comment down below. Share this on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
Brian Lilley, everybody, with the Toronto Sun. Great job there, and just kind of summarizing what what's going on here with this investigation. So the fake news angle here is that yesterday you had the Trudeau government say that they were going to appoint a rapporteur to give them. I think we'll probably see actually the exact quote here. I've got another clip, but I think the exact quote was non-partisan or something reporting and independent and then independently reviewed by another party. And just like they independently reviewed the Emergencies Act inquiry, that was definitely independently reviewed by a Liberal appointed justice. So when the government is policing the government, you're going to be pretty much a safe bet to put your money on the fact that the government's going to say that the government did nothing wrong. It's hard for us to believe that there's transparency within our government in any way if they're investigating themselves, and I think that that's that goes without saying.
And it's something that needs to be tweaked in not just our democracy. See, there's a beautiful thing that happened in the West, and I don't think people sometimes really focus in and realize that the way that the United States and Canada, and England and France and modern Germany were set up, the point of it was not equality, right? It wasn't to make sure that no person was left behind or any of that. The point of it was, because none of those things are possible and they're ridiculous things to hope for. The point of it was to make a system that was extremely resilient to tyranny, that would prevent tyranny as much as can possibly done. Now, what has occurred is that certain groups of people have used modern technology and modern speech even to kind of subvert those anti-tyranny systems that are in place. And that's what we need to push back on and change. And it needs to go beyond the current. We have a tendency to say Joe Biden's horrific. We get him out of office, everything's good. Justin Trudeau is terrible. And then what happens is when they're out of office and things get somewhat better for a few years, we forget about all of the shitty things that are possible. We need to make it so that they are impossible again, to literally destroy the foundation of what can become tyranny. I don't live in a tyranny right now, but I am in a place that is very much on the road towards tyranny. There are many things similar to the Bolsheviks that go on in our government. There's many things similar to the Nazi Party that go on in our government. I'm not saying they're Nazis. I'm not saying they're Bolsheviks. I'm saying they're doing the same things. And when you see patterns and you recognize patterns as a human being, you're supposed to go, we need to stop that, like 3, 6, 9. I don't want it to get to 12. I'm going to stop it at 9,
Yeah, well said, Jay. You should pick up on patterns. History repeats itself, and when you start to get a little bit of a taste of tyranny, you can be assured that that's a warning bell that you should pay a close attention to. When it tastes and smells a little bit like tyranny, it's going to just get worse. They don't start off with full tyranny. They don't start off with the full assault of what they're going to do. But man, if this is the introduction to the tyranny that we should expect from the Liberal government, it's going to get pretty bad, because they've already gone pretty far. They've already overreached considerably. They've quite likely accepted bribes from or payments from a foreign entity in able to get themselves elected. And we're going to see a little bit more about that. I want people to, on this next clip, please pay attention to how little actually gets answered here. This is the standard tactic. And quite frankly, I feel at this point that question period's a waste of time and a waste of taxpayer money, because the Liberals can stand there and give non-answers all day long and say things like, well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals created a program to do that just doesn't even address the question or the thing being said. So,
Mr. Speaker needs teeth. Like I mean, the American system isn't perfect, but I will say that when you have committees, when you have Congress, when you have these things, you have a speaker who can literally say, answer the question or get out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we don't have that right now. No. And we should, and you can clearly see that in this clip. So I'm glad you brought that up, Jay. It's a very, very timely remark. Thank you. All right, here is a little bit of the House of Commons. Try not to enjoy this too much. I know I won't.
The dictatorship in Beijing gave the Trudeau Foundation $200,000. They then interfered in 2 elections to help keep the Liberals in power. They even helped campaign for certain Liberal candidates. And what's the solution now? The Prime Minister proposes a secret committee that will do a secret investigation with secret outcomes. Mr. Speaker, this committee will follow the rule of Fight Club. First rule is no one talks about the committee. Why is the Prime Minister trying so hard to keep everything so secret?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition knows very well that our government has taken very robust measures to protect democratic institutions from foreign interference. Last night, the Prime Minister announced additional measures that will reassure Canadians not only, Mr. Speaker, that our democratic institutions are protected from foreign interference, but those who seek to interfere with these very institutions will be held to account. And that's something, Mr. Speaker, the previous Conservative government did absolutely nothing about.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, I forgot to mention, other than the secret committee that will see secret information and never actually publish any information, there will also be something called a rapporteur, a fake new position that they have invented. Rapporteur. Does it come with a costume? Maybe a cape or and a sword? Is the best they can come up with a fake position doing fake work? Why is it that they're trying to cover up the truth, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister for Interparliamentary Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we didn't need another reason to see that the Leader of the Opposition has never taken this issue seriously. In fact, yesterday, Mr. Speaker, he said something that was shocking. When I pointed out to him that this has existed as a challenge to Canadian democratic institutions, including when he served as Minister of Democratic Reform, he said, of course, the previous Conservative government did nothing about it because it wasn't in their partisan advantage to do anything about it. Think about that, Mr. Speaker. Protecting our democracy is not a partisan issue, it's a Canadian issue.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I want the Prime Minister to stand up today and answer a question. Why is he hiding? Why won't he stand in his seat? What is he hiding from Canadians?
Marco Polo.
This substandard minister. He's been hiding this for 10 years, Mr. Speaker. Whatever it is that he's hiding, it must be bad. It must be really bad. How bad is it?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it is the height of irresponsibility when talking about national security to talk about the fact that national security should just be set aside, that we should just, and just to open up this as if it could be done. Mr. Speaker, it is not something that I think is being responsible. Responsible leadership is saying that every member of this House, every single member of this House is totally and utterly committed to protecting Canadian democracy. The assertion that anything else is true is offensive, untrue, and playing games with national security is not appropriate.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, if the Prime Minister really was interested in protecting national security, he wouldn't be hiding. He'd stand up right now and answer the question. Instead, he hides behind these two stooges who protect him.
On both sides, order. I want to remind the honourable members 2 things. 1, please use parliamentary language and be judicious. And 2, we can't do indirectly what we can't do directly in the House. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition from the top, I'm sure he'll use both principles in his questions. Thank you.
Prime Minister was hiding yesterday from the House. He's hiding today in the House. He's hid for the last 10 years.
Once again, I want to remind the honourable members that we can't do directly what we indirectly what we can't do directly. Now, I don't want to have to move to the next question. I'm sure the honourable member from the beginning, and he would use parliamentary judgment. the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Watch how little teeth he has here.
The Prime Minister has been hiding this for the last 10 years. 10 years ago, he found out that the Trudeau Foundation got $200,000. Over the last 5 years, he's had briefing after briefing warning of interference by Beijing in our elections to support him. And now he's hiding the truth behind a secret committee that will not provide public information. Whatever he's hiding, it must be bad. It must be really bad. How bad?
The Honourable Leader, Government House Leader.
See, he stopped that question 3 times and then let it go.
Official opposition would know well who the Prime Minister is today. He's meeting with the President of the European Commission to talk about national security issues.
Order. I just want to remind me. Order. Resign. Order. I want to remind the honourable members that there's one thing that they cannot do is refer to either the presence or the absence of someone in the chamber. I will let the honourable Government House Leader start from the top, please, and I'm sure he'll be judicious in his words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, that question was asked despite you saying that it was unparliamentary several times. I want to put as a matter of record. But let me say this, Mr. Speaker, and be very clear. Well, one of the things that we had as a long tradition in this country was to make sure that when we were dealing with national security, that we did not use national security as a way to play partisan politics and to grind an axe on one another. Mr. Speaker, the reality is that this issue of foreign interference has been a serious issue. Since well before this government, it was a matter that was that the honourable that the member across was responsible for as a minister. They did not take action. We have
Honorable député de la Prairie.
Well, I'm pretty sure that seems like a whole bunch of non-answers. I don't know about you, Mr. J.
Well, and one of the most glaring things is that maybe sneaks under the radar a little bit is this problem with foreign interference has been a problem since well before. What's well before? What's the date? What's the date of the foreign interference that occurred 10 years ago? It didn't happen. Like, you're speaking about a hypothetical. There was no evidence of it. Nobody ever mentioned it. That's like the Liberals going, oh, well, it happened to us, so it must have happened to previous. Sorry, you're an adult. You don't get to do that. You either give me an example or you shut the fuck up.
They apparently do get to do that because they do it on a daily basis in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's a giant waste of time and taxpayer money, because you're never going to get any information that's relevant, well articulated, true, and to the bottom of anything out of anybody speaking in the House of Commons, at least in question period.
And they also bought the bait. Polyev yesterday gave them the bait. He wanted them to accuse the former conservative governments of that crime. Number one, because they're not supposed to. So that goes on the record too. Number two, they just look stupid. So he just chummed the waters. He said, "Why don't you just fall into my trap?" Okay, there you did. You're an idiot.
He is playing the game of chess, and they're playing checkers. It's clearly obvious. And he did do the, or they did then do the "I know you are, but what am I?" line, which is the level of a schoolyard bully. So it's quite ridiculous. That should take place in our House of Commons, in what is supposed to be the governing body of our country. Yet somehow it's filled with buffoons who say more than they say anything else. And I think it's. I forget. I used to watch a show, and it was all about languaging and body languaging and pausing in your speech and rhythms of speech on how to detect whether somebody's avoiding a question or being deceptive or lying or what have you. And every single liberal gives me that impression that they're trying to avoid a question, that they're lying, they're being deceptive. Every single one of them. Not all politicians give me that feeling. A lot of them do, but every single liberal gives me that impression. So something must, just like the man said, something must be bad. How bad is it? And this should be the scarier thing here for people, is that there is foreign interference in our elections and in our government, and it's so bad that they don't want to admit how bad it is, and they want a non-partisan liberal non-partisan, I use that with air quotes, non-partisan liberal appointed a rapporteur to do some sort of investigation on this, which basically means they'll get about the same result as you did with the Emergencies Act inquiry, where the government investigated itself, found itself to be doing nothing wrong, and is now going to change the law so that you can't ever call an Emergency Act inquiry on the government if they call the Emergency Act. And they're also going to make it easier to call the Emergency Act, as in when dealing with online rhetoric. So our country could be in the midst of martial law due to online rhetoric.
Now, the good thing about there, I'm going to do a shout out to Preston Manning and the fine team who has been doing a citizens inquiry into the Emergency Act. They're presenting their findings in 10 days, Preston Manning said. And I really like that approach too. Nobody ever said that nobody else could do a public inquiry, right? So they had one that was signed off by the Prime Minister. There's no law that said the NDP couldn't do one. There's no law that said the Conservative Party couldn't do one. There's no law that said the people of Calgary couldn't do one. But only certain people, i.e. Preston Manning, actually take it upon themselves to say, well, we can do that too. And then we'll take that to the Supreme Court and we'll fight it. So look for the people who are coloring outside of the lines here and there, because sometimes those people have it right. And the silver lining I will point out about that Parliament video, some people will go, oh, that's so unprofessional, they're just doing a terrible job. How about they're actually behaving like human beings? They're actually pissed off when somebody across the room calls them a liar. You're supposed to be pissed off about that. You're supposed to react. You're supposed to have some kind of passion in your life. And when I see a bunch of politicians screaming at each other, I think that is human behavior. And when people are that pissed off at each other, you might actually get a glimpse of the truth. Somebody might slip up and tell you the truth. The Italian Parliament has had 58 changes of leadership since World War II. Now, some people go, well, that's why they can never get anything done. And I go, no, that's why they have the furthest thing from tyranny possible. If you're switching governments every year and a half, nobody's becoming tyrannical at any point. So personally, me and the whole thing of like politicians should be very professional and prim and no, that's not what you want as your fucking representative. If you walk around the world talking like a politician, sure, you want somebody just like you to represent you. Absolutely. If you're a real human fucking being that has emotions, you want a politician like Donald Trump. You want a politician like Pierre Poilievre.
Absolutely. You want somebody with some bite, with some tenacity. You want somebody who's going to elicit a response from the opposition as well. You need that in government to keep things, to keep your checks and balances. And so,
it's not supposed to be a library in there.
No, it's not. It's not for sure. But I think the majority of the activity in the House of Commons as of late has been basically a whole bunch of questions being asked and not being answered. And I say the questions are being asked to the liberal government and not being answered by the liberal government. They're being given non-answers, and so that was kind of what I was getting at there. I agree full-heartedly. And like I say, the speaker needs to have the ability to actually get something done, and I just hope that I just, maybe it's a silly thing to hope. I hope that there's people who were elected
to be the liberal representatives of some ridings. I hope that there's a few of them out there who are embarrassed. If you're sitting on that side of the house and you see that behavior on your behalf, somebody's representing you like or misrepresenting you like that as a dishonest, lying, avoiding prick, I would hope that you're ashamed. And that's why I put that Jordan Peterson bit in the intro. Don't do things you're ashamed of. If you're ashamed of it, then stop.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's what a lot of people who are on the fence about COVID too. If you're not okay with people having their medical freedom violated, then stop. Don't support it. And silence is support. Right? Like,
yep. I mean, if you say nothing, you're still complicit. If you pass a fault, you see something wrong and you pass it, then you're just as guilty as the person who caused that fault, because you could see
you're an enabler
and you could fix it, and yet you did not, and that's being complicit.
Yeah,
and
you're just an enabler. That's all.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of people that are very complicit in a lot of things in our society. We don't need more. So if you see things that are wrong, you should say something. You should make some noise. You should say something to somebody else. Because
honk your fucking horn.
Yeah, honk your horn. Honk, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Now, Jay, did you have something for us?
I sure do. Yeah, and actually, it's following along that same. We're very syncopated in terms of our fake news today. So I'm going to roll this clip. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, Eric, good to see you.
0.5, 0.25.
Listen, let's begin with Canadian assessment here, because the Prime Minister says he has confidence in measures brought in about 6 years ago to protect Canadian institutions from foreign interference, but that seems offside of what the majority of people think. What do the polls tell us about that?
Yeah, well, the polls are showing that a majority of Canadians do believe that China interfered in our last elections, and that China might have been successful in that. We do see that a lot of Canadians, upwards of 65, 70%, there was a poll by Nanos Research recently showing 71% of Canadians think that this poses a major threat to our democracy. So what we have been hearing from the Prime Minister and the government, that more or less that our institutions have held, doesn't seem to be passing among the Canadian electorate, who think that this is a real problem and that China is interfering in our elections, and almost certainly to do it again.
So how bad are the numbers then? And I'm wondering about that on a couple of fronts. First and foremost, though, with the Prime Minister, how bad are those numbers for him?
Well, we do see from the Angus Reid Institute polling that was done or was published last week that Canadians don't think that the government is doing enough to stand up to China, and also that the government will not do enough to stand up to China. We've also seen that, as I said, a lot of Canadians feel that this is a real threat, so they do want to see action coming from the government. One of the poll questions from the Angus Reid Institute, that was perhaps the most disturbing one, that did find that a quarter of Canadians, after hearing some of the stories that have been out in the media over the last few weeks, believe that the last election was stolen. And, for people who have maybe observed what's been going on in the United States over the last few years, that's a kind of very worrying kind of thing to hear. There's no indication that the election was stolen. Everybody more or less agrees that China's influence would have been relatively minor, even if they had been successful. So to see those kinds of numbers, including upwards of 40% of conservative voters, suggests that not only do people see this as a grave threat, but that for a lot of Canadians, and perhaps too many, that it does put into question the integrity of our electoral system.
Well, let's pick up on that point and build on it, because if that's what people believe about the 2019 and the 2021 election, what impact does that have going forward then?
Well, I think that we're going to see that anything that happens in future elections will often perhaps be attributed to foreign interference, whether or not it's true. I think this is one of the biggest issues that we have here, is that we do have a vacuum of information because a lot of this is confidential information, so that the government is not able to share it. So when we have that kind of vacuum, people often fill it with their the worst case scenario. So in future elections, I think this will put into question anything that happens that seems a little fishy, any kind of movements in the polls, any kind of results that seem unreliable in terms of one riding versus another, anything that just foments this kind of idea that elections are rigged, that we can't trust our own democracy, is just going to have a pretty toxic effect on our how we talk about elections, but also it could have an effect on turnout and people's participation, and that's certainly something that's worrying.
Okay, can we do a reality check though? Because I'm wondering just how much influence was exerted by foreign players. Did efforts from the People's Republic really alter the result in any way?
That seems pretty unlikely. Now, we do have the government officials saying that it doesn't put into question the integrity of our elections. And even if we did attribute the People's Republic of China very great capabilities to change people's minds, they still need to be changing hundreds, in some cases thousands of people's minds in order to swing an election. There's not that many ridings, first of all, where Chinese Canadians make up a big enough proportion to swing a riding. And also just because someone is a Chinese Canadian person and can speak Chinese doesn't mean that they're susceptible to propaganda put out on WeChat or Weibo from Chinese proxies. So when we look at the results of the last election, it's possible that if the Chinese government was able to swing a few hundred votes, which even that would be a lot to do, political parties have a hard time doing that.
All right. So as I was saying earlier, there's these little subversive ways that they're manipulating our wonderful societies that were set up to be anti-tyrannical. And there's a couple of them going on here. And first off, the biggest one that I'll point out is that this is all a Kansas City shuffle, meaning they come in going 71% of Canadians agree that that was not a good election and that the election might have been stolen. And they pandered, and he was pandering to people, and he was drumming up like, oh, this guy believes what I believe. Even the CBC's against Trudeau now. Yes. And then they switch that around and they go, but it couldn't have actually had any effect on the election, so we shouldn't care. Problem with that is, if I was to go to, say, a Vancouver Canucks game, I mean, nobody's perfect. People go to those games. And I take a handgun with me and I shoot it off into the air and I don't kill anybody with the gun, I'm still arrested and charged with it. The effectiveness of the crime does not affect the fact that it's a crime. Whether or not the election interference made a difference in the election, it's fucking wrong. It needs to be stopped. It needs to be punished. Okay, so let's not fucking skate over that and say, well, if people can commit crimes as long as only a certain number of people are hurt, but fuck you, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is this person saying sort of hype. Well, I mean, he's basically speculating and saying, well, the People's Republic of China couldn't have made that big of a difference. You can't swing votes. Like, you're telling me that the People's Republic of China, who has an annual budget of like $3 trillion, can't move a couple hundred votes? You know what? You fucking ugly sweater having penis with eyebrows. That's the most insulting thing to my intelligence that I have seen in my entire fucking life. That is an asinine, stupid fuck statement. And don't do it again, because I'll fucking come after you. And so that's the subversion that's going on there, right? They try to get you on their side, and it's manipulative and it's so sneaky. But what they're really trying to do in the end is just basically gaslight and say, oh, well, we shouldn't, election interference is going to happen. If it doesn't affect the outcome, who cares? No, fuck you. We're not having it. We're not having any of it. It's going to stop. The end. That's my feeling on it. I hope you agree. And if you do, please feel free to write to that fucking douchebag or your local politician and let them know how you feel and that it's never okay.
Jay Shaw, people. Jay Shaw. There you go. And what he says is true. If you have a problem with what's being done, you need to speak out. You need to speak up. You need to start writing emails. When they get 100,000 emails or 100,000 letters, they can't ignore them. And there is a great amount of strength in numbers. Don't let anybody fool you. Don't let anybody dissuade you. You're better off to send 100,000 letters than to never send one. And ultimately, you don't know until you try. So,
and I'll steelman the argument that you're not going to get altruistic politicians, that there's no such thing. I mean, I don't think that every single person who's a politician is bad, but let's say they are. Even so, do you want the lying, crooked politician working on your behalf or against you?
Exactly.
Because, if you show that you have more votes than the non-gender specific confused people who want you pinned up and sticking needles in your arms, if you show that you have more votes than they do and you win, then that crooked person is at least functioning on your behalf and not against you, because that's the lesser of two evils. And as an adult, you got to be pessimistic enough to realize the world is shit. Life is going to be hard. It's going to smack you. It's going to kick you. It's going to put you down. It's your choice to get up, and you at least get to wake up every morning and pick the least shitty of the two bowls. And that's a blessing. And that's adulting. Not believing that an optimistic, unrealistic future is going to happen, but picking the least shitty scenario is one thing you can do. So do it. Today. Well, it's late. Tomorrow. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, at some point, just do it. Just do it. Have some sort of motivation in your life that goes beyond Instagram likes and follows.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
politicians could give a shit.
They could give a shit, exactly. And you could lose your right to view things online by simply not taking place in a vote or being interested in the bills being read into the House of Commons, i.e. C11 as a prime example. So when you're having your rights to view information and decide what is good information and bad information taken away from you, you should be concerned. I think that's time for a concern. The government seems to be able to want to tell you, or seems to want to tell you, what you should believe and what you shouldn't believe. And that's a dangerous position and a dangerous mentality for a government to have, because once they start to control your thought, then you're done. They're already doing a great deal of that just by the propaganda and by the different things they're doing in order to distract you from what they're actually doing and from what's actually going on in the world. A prime example of that would be, look at this, we've changed this policy. Meanwhile, they're sending, $500 million to support the war effort in Ukraine, which is absurd. So there's a lot of give and take there. You have to watch what's going on. You have to look beneath, kind of beneath things, and you have to read between the lines to figure it out. But ultimately, you can only do harm by not speaking. You can only do harm by not finding out things. You can only do harm by not investigating what's actually going on and knowing the truth. Ultimately, it should be a primary objective in your life, is to know the truth and know what's actually going on in the world. So you vote intelligently and you elect the proper people that represent you, and not just one flashy thing they say. If you haven't done your due diligence and you go in and make a decision like that, when you vote, if you make the wrong decision, you've got nobody to blame but yourself, for one, and for another, you could depict your future very simply by electing the wrong person, which it would appear like a lot of people have done here in our situation in this country and in the US with their current president. Things are not looking good on any of our Western fronts here. So All Quiet on the Western Front is a movie, but it's definitely not all quiet on the Western Front. I can tell you that.
No. And I mean, we need to stop placing any value whatsoever on the concept of consensus. Consensus is the opposite of truth. Consensus is when a bunch of people give up and say, fuck it, we'll just all march the same way. There's no such thing as scientific consensus. That's an oxymoron. It doesn't exist. Scientists don't seek consensus. Scientists are the Albert Einsteins who go against the consensus and go, even though a bunch of people say it is so, I'm not just going to blindly agree to that. I'm going to actually look at this and examine it and say, that doesn't fucking make any sense. And that brings me to my next clip, which I'm just going to roll right into here. So believe it or not, surprise, surprise, the pride of Calgary, Alberta.
Bat that had COVID flew into a guy's soup and it sort of wafted into his nose and he got human COVID. Or
Totally
it was
plausible, by the way.
Totally
That's not
reasonable.
a conspiracy
Or
theory
it
at
was
all.
made 2 miles down the road in the Wuhan Institute of Virology that studied bat coronaviruses. It was always the most reasonable baseline assumption. The fact you were censored for it is crazy.
And by the way, the good news is that CPAC is serving bat soup for lunch. It's delicious. So look, what JD said is exactly right. What are the facts that we knew within a couple of months of this pandemic beginning? What are the facts we laid out on this podcast? Number one, the Wuhan Institute for Virology, which studies viruses, not just viruses, studies coronaviruses. Not just coronaviruses, studies coronaviruses derived from bats. By the way, the bats in question that carry these coronaviruses do not occur naturally in Wuhan, China. The closest you can find these bats to Wuhan are in caves that are 900 miles away. Now, where is the Wuhan Institute for Virology? It is literally a couple hundred yards from the wet market where the first outbreak occurred. That's fact number one. Fact number two. In November of 2019, not one, not two, 3 scientists, employees at the Wuhan Institute for Virology checked themselves into the hospital with serious illnesses that may well have been the beginning of the pandemic. Fact number 3, when the pandemic erupted, we discovered that China had been stockpiling protective medical equipment several months before the pandemic, and China ordered the Wuhan Institute for Virology to destroy the samples. Now, look, in a court of law, and I'm sorry you have 2 lawyers here, you did something really wrong. In a court of law, in a civil case or a criminal case, if someone destroys evidence, a judge will instruct the jury, you are entitled to draw an inference from the destruction of evidence that that evidence was incriminating, that there's a reason they destroyed the evidence. In this case, it ain't complicated what the reason was that the Chinese government said, destroy all the samples, we don't want any evidence. It ain't complicated what the reason was that the Chinese government said, destroy all the samples, we don't want any evidence. I think now and then it was overwhelmingly likely that COVID escaped from a Chinese government lab, and I think it is significantly more likely than not that it was in fact altered in that lab through gain-of-function research, that it was a natural virus that they made more dangerous, more deadly, and that's why China doesn't want culpability for it.
So there you go, folks. That's what why we don't listen to consensus. In fact, I would say that the first indication you have that something is bullshit is if somebody's saying there's a consensus. 130 years ago, there was a consensus that the horse was the ultimate method of travel. It was never going to be surpassed. And those idiots who are trying to build a steel machine that will get you down the road are retarded.
Hey,
that's what consensus gets you.
a few hundred years ago, the world, the large majority of the population believed that the world was flat, and that if you sailed just a little bit too far into the horizon, you would fall off the end of the earth. That's what consensus gets you. So be assured that just going along with what the masses believe is generally not a good thing. Have your own critical thought. Use critical thinking. It's a lost art at this point. People seem too hung up on really quick, 30-second videos and just getting their information like that. You can't get enough information in 30 seconds on any subject to have any sort of relevant information. So take the time.
People are afraid to argue because they're afraid that 150 people are going to attack them on some social media or something, and therefore everybody believes that we have to immediately avoid all confrontation. We can't disagree with each other. The second there's a disagreement, we have to okay. Well, stop. No, we need to be able to argue. If somebody has an opinion and they can't fucking defend it, then it isn't worth having.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you have an opinion and you're not willing to defend it, then you're probably
you don't
lying.
deserve it.
You don't deserve the
Yeah, or you
opinion,
don't deserve it.
probably
Yeah.
lying. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those two.
One of
Can't
the
decide
two.
which one's worse. Can't decide which one's worse. Personally.
Hard to say. It's definitely hard to say.
Yeah.
But I would say that either one is not good, and ultimately that's the takeaway here. I have one. This is a little bit longer of a clip, Jay, but we've got time for it. I want to. This is from Rebel News in regards to what we're just talking about, more or less, the government and their lack of transparency and such on many fronts. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll it, Jay.
We like long clips. Smoke them if you got them. Oh yeah, that dickbag that reported us might be watching.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, okay. Anyways, here comes a beautiful clip with our beautiful Prime Minister. We'll be back, folks.
Even with Sun TV watching for any slip, he was asked which country he most admired and referred to China.
The level of admiration I actually have for China.
Was there any interference of any kind?
But Canadians can be reassured that the integrity of our elections was not compromised. One of the things we've seen, unfortunately, over the past years is a rise in anti-Asian racism linked to the pandemic. Concerns being arisen around people's loyalties.
If you criticize Han Dong, you are a racist.
I think that's wrong.
The Prime Minister not wanting to investigate it is just criminal.
Justin Trudeau has this habit of just using words at random.
Tourette syndrome.
David Menzies for Rebel News here at the Toronto constituency office for Liberal MP Han Dong. We're here to send a message to Mr. Dong. And as you can see, we brought our Jumbotron truck with us. Now, folks, if you can please help us out with the expenses, with the rental, the gas, all in, it's about $1,600 or so. If you can go to firedong.com, that's firedong.com, and kick in a couple of bucks, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, the reason why we're here is that Mr. Dong, according to a CSIS whistleblower,
I hope I'm not the only one who finds humor in the firedong.com.
Yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, oh my.
That sounds like it hurts, buddy. All right, okay, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
He is allegedly one of 11 beneficiaries of Chinese interference in the federal Canadian elections of 2019 and 2021. The interference was so massive that Beijing operatives actually enlisted loyalists to bus in seniors to vote for Dong. And for foreign students from China, they told those young people to vote for Dong too. And if they had an issue with that, well, they were threatened with having their visas revoked. It is unbelievable. In fact, according to media reports, CSIS had actually reached out to Justin Trudeau back in 2019 to say that Mr. Dong was not a good choice of candidates given the Chinese interference. But Mr. Trudeau would have none of it. He said Dong is our man, and sure enough, he is the MP for this riding in North Toronto. Why wouldn't Justin Trudeau go to bat for a candidate backed by Communist China? Do you remember in 2013, before he became Prime Minister, when he announced he had admiration in his heart for the basic dictatorship of China? Don't take my word for it. Let's roll that video of that most infamous quote.
The level of admiration I actually have for China.
In any event, Mr. Dong has proven to be a great little loyal puppet for his puppet masters back in Beijing. Get a load of this, folks. On 2 separate occasions, Mr. Dong removed himself from the House of Commons in terms of a vote condemning China on its treatment with the Uyghur Muslim minority there. Unbelievable. Now, as for Trudeau's response,
Not
well, he's going to
suspicious.
get to the bottom of this, folks, which is to say, he's going to find out who the whistleblower at CSIS is. Yeah, he wants to shoot the messenger. He doesn't want to deal with the message. And P.S., if you do dare criticize MP Dong, guess what? According to Justin Trudeau, you are a racist.
One of the things we've seen, unfortunately, over the past years is a rise in anti-Asian racism linked to the pandemic.
Liberal
This
playbook.
guy, this prime minister, playing the race card, a man that has the nickname Blackface McGroper, give me a break. In any event, we're going to pay that house call to Mr. Dong. We heard
Everybody
that he's
should
closed
use
the
that.
office today because there's going to be a demonstration in a couple of hours. And we'll just drive about in his riding and see what people have to say about Mr. Dong. And for that matter, the Trudeau Liberals, especially given these disturbing allegations that China altered our elections.
Whenever you call his office, he's always for help.
Really, his office is locked right now.
Well, if it is locked,
yes.
Well, it's just that that's all wrong propaganda that you guys are putting through all this.
Oh no, sir!
You just guys want Trudeau to be out.
No, sir, it's not our propaganda. This is based on information from a CSIS whistleblower, Canada's top spy agency.
No, it's not. It's not. I read that every day, every single day. I am on the top of the news, my friend.
Oh, okay. Well, where's that information coming from?
Well, you get it from CSIS and everywhere.
If that is true, if Communist China interfered with our election to get him elected, should he step down, sir?
I don't know. I don't know much about this.
No?
I don't understand English. I think he should step down.
Okay, then.
If that's the case.
Hey, guys, what do you think about Han Dong stepping down? The allegation is China interfered with the election.
Well, that's the key word, allegedly.
Yes.
And I think it has to be looked into to see if indeed there was any such interference. And I don't say this only for our country. I say it for any country.
What's your take on why Mr. Dong left the House of Commons at the last minute on two occasions when there was a vote to condemn China regarding the Uyghur Muslims in China? What's happening with them?
Well, I don't know about it, but whatever was happening in that province, in the Muslim province, was not right. What China is doing.
There are allegations from CSIS that China interfered with the election to get him elected. Any thoughts? No. Okay. What do you think about our prime minister saying, if you criticize Han Dong, you are a racist?
I think that's wrong. Yeah.
Don't you think that's very rich, given that Justin Trudeau himself doesn't know how many times he's donned blackface?
Well, I think that was addressed in the last election of 2019, if I recall. I think he came back with a properly justified answer that people judged him. People judged him at the polls.
Hey, ho, ho, hand on Moscow.
So, Olga, what brings you out to this demonstration?
We seem to have a little challenge in our country these days on many fronts. And I just want to go back to the Canada that we moved to when I was a little girl, where I grew up, and it was a beautiful place to grow up, which is being pulled out from under our feet.
Even all these allegations of them funding this MP Han Dong, and the Prime Minister not wanting to investigate it is just criminal.
I'm not surprised with the way things have been going.
I meant he basically really detailed what he had in store for us. It was up to people kind of beyond the words, kind of beyond
Listen
the
to this
interview.
guy.
Like he laid all of this out, that this is what's going to happen.
Admiration I actually have for China.
I came here as a refugee. I escaped from
Iran, right?
From Iran. I escaped from a country that we don't have a free and fair election. Okay, I know the lack of freedom. I was tortured. I was in prison, so look at that. You're gonna let the Chinese regime seeking the political influence in Canada.
Well, we have a new scandal every week pretty much right now, but that's a big one. And the problem is that it seems like CSIS and RCMP are doing their job, but
Arrest
the Prime
that
Minister
dog.
of Canada
Best
is
sign.
stopping them from doing it. And that's a problem. That just means that Justin Trudeau must go, and he must go to jail.
He supports their basic dictatorship, and he supports China. I think he wants to make us like China. I don't see it happening, but it's his dystopian nightmare that he wants to push on us, whether we like it or not.
My friends, as the world turns today, what keeps me occupied is certain regimes' brutality against its own people. As well, their network of spies that they have unleashed across the West.
Is he that naive? Or is he doing this knowingly? And I don't think in today's world anyone can be naive enough not to understand the agendas of entities like the Muslim Brotherhood, the IRGC, and the communist regime of China.
What do we have to do to correct this ship?
I believe it's going to be down to us, the people, who have to stand together and be open to communicating with each other. We cannot allow ourselves to buy into the divisiveness that this government is trying to cause.
It's crazy, it's disgusting, and it's beyond words. And that's kind of why we're here today, to try and raise awareness and try and show as many people that might not realize what's actually going on right in front of this man's office.
How you can call this crowd racist? Knowing what is going on in Canadian politics is the right for the people. You know that we chanted today. We are the people. We got the power. Okay.
Well, this is probably scandal within a scandal. It's a big problem when the Prime Minister seems to be compromised to the degree that he's going after his own Secret Service and not against a foreign superpower who infiltrated his country. So.
When you have a weak and ineffective leader in power, like young Mr. Trudeau, other regimes and entities like the Muslim Brotherhood, the IRGC of Iran, and the Chinese Communist Party take full advantage of the leader's cowardice, his inability to make a strong decision, and his stupidity.
One has to be brave enough to speak the truth and stand up for the truth. And if Canada is a country that we love, which of course I do, then let's do something to show our love for Canada, and that is to fight for our freedoms.
Folks, it's absolutely outrageous. Communist China allegedly interfering with our elections, getting Liberal MPs elected, and causing Conservative MPs to lose their seats. Unbelievable. We're spreading the word about this injustice. If you can help us out with our expenses, please go to firedong.com. That's firedong.com. And if you're able to, kindly make a donation.
I just want to go to firedong.com just to say I went to firedong.com because it's such a hilarious name. So I think it stands to reason here, folks. Jay, I don't know if are you still there? No, your mic is muted, Jay, just so you know. Jay is muted. I think it stands to reason. Well,
Sorry, I turned my mic off so I could cough there, and then I forgot.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I think it stands to reason that people can see here that there's been interference in our elections, and they have a problem with it. And if you have a government who sees its citizens standing up and saying something, and then it denies that, and then says it's going to appoint a special commission to oversee itself, you need to start making more noise. we don't have what most people would refer to as a democracy at that point, right? If there's a foreign entity influencing people that are being elected through, basically forcing or influencing or threatening Chinese citizens that are Chinese Canadian citizens, that listen to them because they have family, say, back in China that they fear for. We have a very serious national security issue. And I don't want to downplay this, although it is Fake News Tuesday. The fake news is that the government's going to appoint any kind of committee that will actually be finding anything contrary to what the government wants them to find. And the correction on the fake news is what we just presented here for you, is the fact that the government's not going to do anything but just say, we did an investigation, we're all good, we didn't actually break the rules. And you can't have the fox guarding the hen house, and I think that should speak for itself in that regard.
Who do you get? Let's see. You get somebody with a lot of political acumen, who's well respected, who's never been caught with his pants down in the wrong place or telling lies or anything. Somebody of high intelligence, somebody who has served public office. You get Preston Manning. Why? Because he's never been a conservative. He's never been a liberal.
For a second, I thought you were talking about me, because I was like, I've been caught with my pants down in the wrong place, and then you said something different. So I knew it was not me.
Yeah, no, Preston Manning, man. Not a conservative, not a liberal. Served at the highest level, official opposition. That's who you get. That's who you get. Now, one thing I will say to Rebel News is there's only one Mad Hatter. You can't just put on a goddamn canvas bag on your hat, on your head, and call that a hat. Now, and so just because I know we're running out of time here, I just wanted to wrap up, because we never did actually mention to our viewers the time that we did get reported on YouTube a couple weeks ago, maybe just a little over a week ago, for misinformation related to COVID.
This is good. Okay, yeah.
Which I reported to Scott immediately. I contacted YouTube. YouTube was on our side. The video was reinstated within 120 minutes. It's less than 2 hours. So if you are the person who reported us, because YouTube didn't want to do that, that's because you put a report in. And if you're watching right now, I'm going to say to you that I have actual evidence and proof that Justin Trudeau loves Mr. Dong, and there's not a fucking thing you can do about it. I said it.
We know Justin Trudeau loves the dong. It's clearly obvious. You see the guy walk around, he looks like he's got a dong.
Also, for those who don't know, when he mentioned McGroper, he wasn't just pulling that out of the air.
No,
Justin Trudeau did grope a young lady. I happen to live in the town where that happened. Preston was the town where he did that.
So, Blackface McGroper is
it's a thing.
I mean, I'm gonna have to make a T-shirt at this point. If anybody wants to have a T-shirt that says Blackface McGroper with that Justin Trudeau blackface image on it, let us know. We will make that T-shirt for you, and for a small fee, we will ship it to you so you can sport that motherfucker and show Justin Trudeau just how you really feel. I know,
and we'll put our little Lempire graphic on the crest there for you too.
Sure,
if you haven't seen our Lempire graphic, it's fantastic.
We'll even print on there, ban the dong if you want, whatever you want to have on your T-shirt. We'll put it there.
I don't want that to happen.
You don't want to ban the dong?
No, I have the dong. I don't want it banned.
But I'm talking about the hand dong.
The hand dong?
All right, we're going down the
it's too easy. Like it's fucking too easy. Like if you're gonna pick a crooked Chinese Canadian
Yeah.
to accept the
kidding.
bribes from China. Pick one with a
No
fucking
kidding.
better name than Jesus.
Han Dong. And then pick a better a site name than firedong.com. Like
Also a bad choice. Also
that
a bad
sounds like it really hurts. I don't want firedong. I don't know what it is, but I don't want it. And then just the mere description of it makes me a little bit itchy.
choice. That sounds like a documentary of former porn stars or something, like a expose on the life after porn or some shit. I don't know.
I think on that note, I think we should call it there.
We've said it all, right?
We've said it all. I think
We have.
we're going to call it there, folks. It's been fun. It's Fake News Tuesday. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for joining us here live. Thank you for watching us, later on. And thank you for
And
listening
joke them
to
if they can't take a fuck, by the way.
And yeah, fuck them if they can't take a joke. Or joke them if they can't take a fuck, whichever, however you say it. Either way, doesn't matter. We're the Unacceptables. I'm Scott. This is Jay. We're out. We'll see you. I guess we'll see you Thursday because it's Tuesday. So we'll see you in a couple of days. Unfortunately for you, you're gonna have to see us all over again in 2 days.
46 hours.
Yeah, 46 hours. There you go. All right. We'll see you soon, kids. Good night.